Welcome to Riding Counsel with Rich Jaffe, where the open road meets expert advice. I'm Richard Jaffe, an attorney and biking enthusiast, and this is the podcast where we dive into the world of motorcycling, safety, culture, charitable giving, and riding right. So, whether you're a seasoned rider or just getting started, let's talk bikes, the road, and everything in between. Let's ride! It is January 5th. 2026, everybody. Hello, my name is Rich Jaffe, and Happy New Year to you, the listener. Howdy, everybody. And, it's the first podcast of the new year. I'm kind of excited. I'm here with my friend Million. Let me tell you something. We're going to start off riding right, okay? And what I mean by that is we're going to talk about charity and why charity is so important. If you want to know how charity will affect you both on and off the bike, when it comes to giving back as a biker, this episode is for you. It's important because you need to ride right. You need to think about charity, and you love motorcycles. And I love the law because that's what I do, right? I am Rich Jaffe. I am a lawyer. I am a personal injury lawyer. I'm a podcaster, and I'm a motorcycle enthusiast. And we are here talking about motorcycle law, charities, and a guide to riding right with my good friend Million. How you doing, Million? Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to everybody out there. I appreciate you. And I am a fan of Rich Jaffe, so this works out, right?
Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you, Million, for being my fan. You could be my number one fan because you are a host.
Yes,
so I appreciate that. It was a long road. It's a long way to the top.
It is. Well, with this podcast, I really sort of crystallized in my mind how it's true what you said about bikers always seem to give back. They're always doing charity runs and events and things like that. And it's something I always hear about, but I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was a formal kind of thing. In the motorcycle community at large, what is this whole giving back thing? Because I see like guys everywhere. What do we call or consider giving back?
Listen, charity is a very, very important part of riding right. Okay. The two go hand in hand. And also, motorcycles. And I always will tell you that the motorcycle community is one of the best communities out there. Always giving, always standing up for the little guy, always supporting one another. And charity is just another way of doing that. And a lot of times, it's great to have the feedback when you're giving to charity, meaning like you see the person who is really benefiting. But a lot of times it's people who you never even meet, where bikers give and they never even meet them, but they know it's going to a good cause. Mostly it goes to veterans, children, hospitals, things like that. Really, really good, like sub communities, if you will, and really good causes. But it's an important part of motorcycle riding because giving back is in the biker nature. It's just like if somebody gets into an accident, they're on a motorcycle, right? It doesn't stop after, maybe news cameras are there, or you have a lawyer and, everything is all the adrenaline is flowing, and, it starts making the newspapers, and, people are talking about it. But what happens, after you start going to PT for a couple of days, weeks, maybe even a month? You still need the support, but where is that support? And most bikers will support other bikers, and they really have each other's backs, and it's a good way to be. It makes you more humble, makes you more intelligent, and it really sets your mindset when you're on a ride. So all of these things are really important. I mean, it's humanity, right? We're all connected in one way or the other, and this really emphasizes it.
We see that that giving back is part of motorcycle culture, but why? Like, did it stem from something originally? Is it like how did it get to be so heavily ingrained?
I think, first of all, there is a brotherhood, right? I mean, motorcycle riding really got popular after World War II. And a lot of the soldiers came back, and they felt that brotherhood overseas when they were fighting World War II. And they came back and they found that same brotherhood, with motorcycle riding. And so that's when they started forming clubs, and, the other wars ensued, Korean War, Vietnam War, and there were more and more soldiers that started to form these tight bonds, and they found it in motorcycle riding, just like they found it when they were overseas. So, and that continued. It spilled over into law enforcement, police, court officers, even firefighters, and all different kinds of clubs. So that brotherhood really is an expression of the bond that everybody shares. And when you have a bond like that, it's everybody pitching in for everybody else. Everybody's got everybody else's back. So, that's really where it comes from. So it's all coming from a good place. And to me, it always feels like the people with the least and the least amount of power to actually give back the most.
That's always the way. Yep.
Yeah, it's really crazy like that. But the good nature of motorcyclists never ever cease to amaze me. It's all over the place. So, it's just like if you see somebody stranded on the road from a motorcycle and they have the helmet in the back of their bike,
Yep.
on the ground, you're going to stop. I mean, that's just what bikers do for one another. So, it really dates back pretty far.
I noticed that amongst the charities, it's always, I'll say, like the usual suspects. Like it's the veteran causes, it's the children's hospitals. Specifically, what is it? And I guess you sort of touched on it, but I noticed that a huge veteran contingent. It's always very deeply in the mix. What is it about veterans that draw them to this so much? Beside the Brotherhood, of course.
Listen, I think, well, veterans are taken care of, or let's just say they are purportedly taken care of by the federal government, right? You have VA hospitals, you have different kinds of benefits. They can go to the PX stores and get discounts and things like that.
Mhm.
But it's very hard for the federal government to take care of an entire nation full of veterans. And a lot of times veterans fall through the cracks. So, people do have universal needs, like hospital care and food and things like that. Okay, that's all well and good. But there's other needs that veterans usually have. And when those kinds of people fall through the cracks and they're not attended to, well,
Mhm.
it's up to us as a community to step up and take care of these people. So we don't want them to feel like they're forgotten people. And a lot of times they are by our own government. But as a society, as bikers, we tend not to forget anybody. We don't leave anybody behind. And
Mhm.
that's when we step up and we do the right thing and really treat people as individuals.
Yeah. Never leave a fallen comrade, as they say.
That's right. That's right. Leave no man behind.
And you
And
and
that's
you
just the
see
thing.
that in those brotherhood organizations. You see that where just because you're part of the organization, you tend to look out for everybody in that organization, whether you know them or not. And so, why should riders care about people they don't know? Why is that such a thing?
Well, listen, we all have, because unfortunately, we as motorcyclists are exposed to accidents probably more so than the general public. And I'm going to venture out and say that it's only a matter of time until it happens to one of you out there. And I hope it never does. And if it is, of course, give me a call. You can always find me at ridingcounsel.com. You can text me, email me. You can even listen to me on something like Apple Music on my podcasts there. But when it happens to you, when it's your turn, you're going to want a community there to support you. And I know the motorcycle community will be there, but it just comes out of tradition. So be a part of it. It's always good to live your life in this world, giving more than you take. So keep that in mind when you're riding. I mean, that's part of riding right. It's all about the mentality. It's going to make your ride better. It's going to make your connection to your brotherhood better. It's going to make your connection to your surroundings better, and it's going to give you a much better life.
So, is there a misconception? Because bikers are often misunderstood. Is there any kind of misconceptions with bikers doing charity? Is there anything that come up? Do people actually take like exception to some of this stuff at all?
Here's the thing that I think about, and of course, I'm based out of Long Island, and there's a lot of charity work that I do personally. But even when I'm not doing it, that doesn't mean that charity stops. There's a lot of charity events all over New York State,
Mm.
and all over the country, of course. But in Long Island, traffic gets pretty heavy, especially, springtime, summertime, even like, up and through October because the wineries are getting very busy. And when there's a specific kind of charity that involves blocking traffic to let all the bikers go,
Mm.
which by the way, they pay to ride,
Mm.
um, people get upset. Oh, why are they stopping traffic? I can't believe they're stopping traffic for these motorcycles. They're crazy. But you know what? Eh, Look, if you haven't given to the charity yourself, just be a little understanding and wait 1 minute or 2 minutes. It doesn't cost you anything. And just show a little courtesy to the people who are actually stepping up and supporting these charities. So, yeah, it's an inconvenience for a minute, 2 minutes. Let's say it's 5 minutes. I mean, still, just have a little courtesy and a little respect for the bikers who ride in these charity events. And I just want to be clear here, these charity events are not free for the bikers. The bikers pay for the privilege of being on the ride. And a
Mm,
lot of them do fundraising outside of those who are actually riding. But I would say the misconception there is that motorcyclists are causing trouble, they're causing problems
mm,
because they're having traffic stopped and they're taking up our tax dollars. But
mm.
far from the truth that is. And they're really supporting the people who might be living right next door to you.
So drilling down from the community level to more the individual level, my next question would be is how does being part of this charity and these kind of runs, how does that make you a better biker?
It puts you in the right mindset, and you always have to be in the right mindset when you're going to be on that motorcycle. And when I say right mindset, you have to be riding for the right reasons. If you're angry, don't ride
Mhm,
because you're going to get into an accident and you're not going to be thinking clearly. If you're really sad, don't ride because that feeling is going to be so overwhelming that it's going to distract you from the dangers that are around you. You always every motorcycle trip, every motorcycle ride starts before you get on that bike. And if you're part of a charity event or an upcoming charity event, it's going to help your mindset be clear, and it's going to because of that it's going to help you ride safer, it's going to help you ride smarter, and you're also going to be able to teach other people who may follow in your footsteps what a good thing is to do. And those good things include contributing to charities, maybe even setting up charities, maybe providing for the safety of charities. But nonetheless, it's always a good thing to pass on all of these good traits to the future generation.
Do you, as someone who deals with a lot of motorcyclists, good, bad, indifferent clients, so on and so forth, do you notice a difference in people that actually do the community and charity stuff versus those who don't? Do you see that, like, see it on them, see it in them?
Absolutely. You can tell you can tell somebody who really goes and does these charities. You can look at them and you can see, but you can also tell by their character. So when you meet them, your connections are stronger. Their values are more defined, and it helps them be a better person. It helps them not only on the bike, but it helps them off the bike because they have better relationships with their children. They have better relationships with their spouses. They have more solid jobs. They have more of an idea defined about what they want out of life. And most of the time it's enjoyment. But this overall concept of riding right, and riding right also means when you're off the bike. And it really is that notion of giving more than you take. So yeah, I really do see a difference. And these people show up more often than not to more charities than people who are not so connected to charities.
Does that translate to how they behave on the road and how they're driving factors into that? Does that trickle down?
I think so because it goes back to that notion of riding right and really thinking about safety first. Okay. Whatever have you, okay, the main goal here, the mission is safety, right? I mean, that's really the mission. And people who are more charitable than others usually keep the mission first and foremost, right? Which is safety, and then the charity, and their egos are way down here. Okay, it's not about speeding, it's not about beating a light, it's not about racing your friend, it's not about any of that. It's about doing the right thing. So they're the ones who are teaching the future generations. They're the one making it a safer ride by not speeding and by not joyriding. It's really something that they appreciate more because they're doing a charity.
I just think back to the whole military veteran thing. I will always put the mission first. I will never leave a fallen comrade. Has the same, that same element to it
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
lot of ways. And I would assume that, makes them a better driver, makes them more conscious. I would assume it also mitigates risk because if you're in a group, you're in a community public situation, you have to be more cognizant of everything going on. So not only does it, make you a better rider, but I guess you get more hyper aware of like risks and how you're doing it. And it just brings it more to the surface in my estimate.
Yeah, everybody on a ride, especially on a group ride, the more predictable you are on a group ride, the safer it's going to be. So if you're like the clown, if you're the showboat, doing wheelies down the street, nobody knows when you're going to start doing those wheelies. And then nobody's going to know how to react, right? And if you're going to surprise somebody, no one's going to know how to react. But if everybody's on the same wavelength, everybody keeps the one goal in mind, which is safety and the mission of charity, and puts their ego way down here, then it's going to be a lot safer ride. No need for speeding. And you're thinking about all the right things. You're thinking about what good you're going to do for the charity. You're thinking about, your people, your motorcycle brothers and sisters behind you, in front of you, on the side of you, and you're going to have that connection at the end of the ride. So yeah, it really does make you a better rider if you're doing charities. It's a lot safer. It's a lot
Mhm.
safer.
Now, there clearly is always one in every bunch. I would assume that at times, I'm sure it's happened, that there are maybe somebody that can get a little dangerous, like you say, maybe showing off, showboating a little bit. What happens in those situations? How's that usually handled?
Well, honestly, they should be kicked off the ride immediately, and hopefully the charity ride is organized in such a way that the leaders of the ride will recognize that. And usually there are leaders of the ride, right? There's the pack leaders up front, and then there's the sweep in the back, and there's some people in the middle too. And if it's organized correctly, the traffic is stopped not just by clubs, not just by the motorcyclists themselves, but by police officers and different law enforcement. And if the law enforcement sees them, maybe they're going to get a ticket, but they should be taken immediately off the ride, because that's not only a danger to themselves, but they're putting everybody else in danger, and they're making a really bad name for motorcyclists. I mean, why even do that? It's just not the image that any motorcyclist wants to portray, except, I mean, if you really want to be like an evil Knievel kind of guy, but you know what? There's places for that, and it ain't on a charity ride.
With the leaders that are running that, as you were saying, the guys that are monitoring this, I would assume that this also reinforces what we were talking about in a previous podcast about how you conduct yourself in a group ride. You got your rules and your planning and your route discipline, accountability. I would assume that being part of this really strengthens that up because now it becomes serious.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the ride itself can be serious, and spacing really becomes a factor, and that consistency and predictability. And when you got somebody showboating, it just, it's like the antithesis. It's just, you have consistency over here on one side, and some guy popping a wheelie on the other side, with his what he thinks is like his big wheels or something like that. I mean, it's just not the place to do it, and it's just indecent. Not only it's disrespectful to your fellow bikers, to the charity, to motorcyclists in general. I mean, why even do that? I mean, if you really want to do that, there's places again to do that. You can go to a track, you can go to a private area, take your own life in risk, but we're here trying to actually preserve life and do something good through charity and, good riding skills and ability.
From the perspective of the leaders of this ride, what do they have to keep in mind? How do they set the tone? How are they preparing this? What's kind of their responsibility, their unique responsibility?
Yeah, well, they have a lot. They have a lot. Okay. And, it starts with planning. Okay. So, Sun Tzu Art of War, one of the famous sayings in there, translated loosely, is every battle is won before it is ever fought. So these guys have to go out, and they got to make sure the roads are in good shape. Right. So it's called proofing the route. So they have to ride the route several times to make sure it's safe. I mean, that's really a responsibility that they might have, right? I mean, look, you got to look out for potholes, you got to look out for dangerous intersections,
Mm.
maybe lights that are not working, maybe speed bumps, maybe even pick another route. But you have to proof that route several times, and even as it gets closer to the actual event, that's one thing they have to do. They have to make sure that security for the ride itself is in place, and that means securing like law enforcement or somebody like that to help stop traffic, especially if you have a lot more bikers. At different intersections, at different lights, they have to make sure that sometimes they need permits, sometimes they need insurance, and sometimes they need some, liability. The liability issues will pop up. So maybe, an agreement that everybody participating on the ride assumes the risk of riding the ride. And, there's a lot of exposure and a lot of things to worry about. And I don't know how they find the time to do it, but my hat is off to them. I've been on some great charity rides,
Yeah.
and they've been highly organized, and everybody was safe. And I've been on some not so good ones. So, you also, as a rider, you really need to know what you're getting into and ask the proper questions.
Well, let's go the other direction. Let's talk about some of the not so good ones. I would assume that if it's not well organized, not well planned, not only is there the safety and the personal risk issue, but now we got some legal issues that may come up from this. So, what do we have to understand about poorly organized rides like this?
It all comes down to the issue of control. How much control does the charity itself have over the ride? How much control does a particular club have over the ride, or anybody else have over the ride? Because those are the people who may or may not be liable for what goes on during the ride. So everybody really has to be very careful about what their particular role is in setting up the ride. But these poor rides, usually they're not backed by law enforcement. Law enforcement is usually not um, informed that the ride is actually going to happen. And you know what? Sometimes the charity isn't. So, communication is key. And also, when the advertisement or publication of the ride goes out, they really should be specific about what kind of bikes really should be on the ride. So if it's going to be a ride that's going to require a higher amount of skill, well, you got to put that in. If it's a ride that only touring bikes are welcome, as opposed to sport bikes or ADV bikes or something like that, you got to put that out there. So, a failure to communicate is probably the big number one thing that makes a bad ride. I mean, look, somebody's going to drop the ball somewhere, right? And that's to be expected in any kind of thing that you might organize, especially dealing with so many people. I mean, some of these charity rides have thousands of bikers,
Wow.
but people have to step up to the plate, and they have to understand that bikers are putting their lives in your hands. So they have a lot of responsibility that they're taking on, and most of the time they're not paid for that.
When these rides happen, are the motorcycle clubs specifically formed as a charity organization, or is it like outsourced, like another standalone charity organization brings them in? Like, what's the interplay between the two?
So usually what will happen is when a motorcycle club is formed, they will adopt a charity.
Ah,
So
gotcha.
for instance, I'm a member of the Blue Knights Motorcycle Club. So the Blue Knights typically are law enforcement personnel. At least they have a law enforcement background, whether that's military, police, something like that. And there's many chapters. In fact, it's an international motorcycle club. So you're going to find
Hmm,
them in different kinds of countries.
cool.
And usually each chapter don't essentially adopts a charity that they support through the year. It could be several charities, right? And they could do many runs, but at least one charity they essentially adopt. I really haven't seen something where, it's the charity first and then out of the charity comes the motorcycle club. I haven't really seen that. Um, other than a group called BACA, which is Bikers Against Child Abuse. So that really kind of goes hand in hand, right? I mean, these people are motorcyclists and they use the motorcycle culture to support these children who are victims of abuse. Other than the Bikers Against Child Abuse, I really don't know of any.
So let's pivot to community. And I actually thought of you the other day. I was on YouTube, I was watching a video, and I saw a guy was on a motorcycle and he had his helmet cam on, which is where the footage came from.
Right.
And as he was driving up, there was another guy on the side of the road, and I guess he was something was wrong with his bike and he was trying to fix it. And the guy pulled over, didn't know him, pulls over and goes, "Hey man, you need some help?" And I'm like, "Hey, I remember Rich talking about that." And the guy was like, "Yeah, I need tools. I got to fix this." And in the guy's bags, he actually had like tool kits and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And the video is like the next, I guess, hour or two. They're on the side of the road fixing motorcycles, fixing engines. They got the thing running. Everybody went on their way, handshaking. And I'm like, this community thing is like solid. It's like, especially with people you don't know. So I thought the other day when I saw that. And so the community plays a gigantic role in this. So looking at sort of the unpleasant side. So let's say a crash happens. How does the community get involved if someone is in a crash? What's the support looking like?
Well, I can tell you around here on Long Island and most of the United States, but I find it very underscored here that there's a lot of support for accident victims around here, aside from what I do, which is, a motorcycle accident law.
Mhm.
And by the way, you can always find me, God forbid you need me, you can always find me at ridingcounsel.com, ridingcounsel.com. And you can text me, email me, whatever you need to do. I'm always available. But to answer your, and you can also find me, if you're not listening on YouTube, you can also find me on a lot of other channels, like on my podcast on Apple Music and Spotify, things like that. But to answer your question, um, there is a lot of support for bikers who are in these accidents or even roadside. So, and most of it comes from fellow bikers. The local Harley groups actually have specific vans that they drive around once in a while, and they actually will go on the highways looking for stranded motorcyclists. So it's kind of like a mobile mechanic. There's also all kinds of things on the internet where you can call an emergency number and a fellow biker will come out and get you, or help you get a repair or something like that. But if you're on a group ride, well, and something happens on your bike, then I'm not leaving that guy until I am absolutely sure that that biker is okay, whether that be by, a tow, or we repair it on the side, or, something. But I'm not leaving that because, you're out there with a motorcycle, you're pretty exposed to nature in the wild, and, on the LIE cars. I mean, it's
Mhm.
crazy. But bikers also step up because they offer free things. Sometimes they offer clothes, sometimes they offer money, sometimes they offer help through physical therapy, sometimes they offer rides to and from physical therapy. I mean, it's really fantastic that everybody steps up. There is a big community that will support you. And like I said, it's great to be a part of these charity groups because God forbid you are one of these people who need it in the future. You're going to want the same thing. You're going to want people there for you. So, in the meantime, you be there for them.
And remember, listeners, writingcounsel.com is where you can get your legal advice pertaining to this, which is my next question. Have you ever seen cases or juries, anything like that, where community support makes a difference or factors in somehow in the legal side of things?
Well, yes, I do. A lot of times it's very hard to find people. Like if you're down on a bike, it's hard to find witnesses, number one, who will want to cooperate with you. So bikers usually support bikers in that regard. They usually exchange their information and make themselves available if that's needed. A lot of other times, if somebody goes down and it's due to the negligence of somebody else, there's somebody who's videotaping that stuff. So, I listen to me. I'm aging myself. Videotape. I mean, why don't I say Betamax? But they
Call me.
have a cam, right? They have the cam on their helmet or on their motorcycle or something like that. So I've seen that. But I think even more importantly, you doing or somebody doing charity work really says a lot about who you are, your character, you're you as a person. And if you're going to get up there in front of a jury and you say, "Yeah, I'm a motorcyclist," right? I'm a biker. I dress up in these leather, but then you start saying, but what I do with my motorcycle is not what you think. I'm doing all kinds of charities. I'm raising money. I'm getting clothes. I'm getting toys. I'm supporting people for, breast cancer or child abuse. And, people start to look at you a little different. And as much as we're not supposed to really base our views on what happened in the accident or how the accident happened, or maybe how much money for compensation we give, it does play a role. It does play a role. And we all want to have good character and, family values and strong values. And I think this really plays a big role in that.
So,
So,
as a lawyer or a biker, whichever way you want to go with this one, uh, what's a memorable charity ride that you personally were involved with in some way? Biggest impact, something that really stuck with you. What can you personally share?
I'm going to say that I went up to the Syracuse area, a little town called Cicero,
Okay.
which is probably, if you're in a car, it's probably 4.5, 5 hours from where I am on Long Island, but it took a long time on a motorcycle, and I actually slept over, and I rode up there for a breakfast that was given by a group called Finding the Next Step Together. And you can find that, by the way, finding, you spell it out, finding the next step together.org. And they're a fabulous organization where they raise money, and they are a charity that accepts a lot of other things to support families with children who are newly diagnosed with terminal illness. They help parents stay with those kids in the hospital, out of the hospital. And if those parents have to, somehow avoid work or something, anything, then this finding the next step together group will step up and maybe help with electric bills, maybe help with, gas bills or the rent or the mortgage, so long as they could be with their child who is newly diagnosed. I mean, that's really important. And that's one of my favorite causes, to be honest with you. And it's so local and it's really grassroots, and doesn't seem to be any other organizations that fill that void. But I went up for that breakfast and it was great. It was fantastic. I mean, that's something where, the journey and the destination were great. Usually it's the journey for me that matters. And it was a fantastic ride, but the destination was great too.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
All right. So final takeaways here, as far as, this riding right thing doesn't end when the engine's on. The engine turns off. It's just as important. So what is your final takeaway to somebody that may want to get involved, is involved? Round it all up for me, man.
There are thousands of charities out there. My wish for you is to get involved with any charity you can. Any charity you can. And if you need suggestions for charities in your area, if you're looking just for that, reach out to me. I'm happy to provide you a list of them. And I'll even list some on my YouTube channel and hopefully my website. If, look, the ride doesn't really stop when you get off the bike. It doesn't stop. It's how you live your life. And I hope everybody out there, just like you're riding right, just live your life right and give back, because sooner or later you're going to need that to come back to you.
Yep.
Anyway, so listen, we went a little over today, but it was really great talking about this very important topic.
Good stuff.
Fantastic stuff with charity. And, it's a new year and I hope to do a lot of charity. So if you have a charity ride out there and you're listening to this and you have a charity that you're looking for support for, hit me up. I'd really like to try to help if I can. I'll get the word out. Maybe we could do a podcast together and publicize it somehow. But there's a lot of great causes and I hope you're the spark for one of them. But until then, I want everybody to be safe out there, ride great, be great, and have a great time. Be wild, be free, but, do so legally. And Happy New Year, everybody. You take care.
Happy New Year.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Riding Counsel with Richard Jaffe. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your fellow riders. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and ride safe.